Combat nurse Lena Voss stood alone beside the memorial wreath when Colonel Mercer read every fallen name except hers. The unit shifted in embarrassed silence. A wounded veteran gripped his cane until his knuckles went white, and the retired war dog, Ranger, began growling at the polished bronze plaque as if it were hiding a body. On Lena's sleeve, a faded field patch had been ordered removed. In her pocket, a dog tag nobody believed was real burned against her palm. Then Ranger broke formation, dragged his ruined hind leg across the stage, and stopped beneath the colonel's speech folder. Why had the ceremony every survivor still dreamed about? And why did the dog look ready to bite the man holding the truth? Before this forgotten maddest story unfolds, tell us where you're watching from. Leave your country in the comments, and subscribe to Forgotten Medic Files if you believe courage, loyalty, brave dogs, and hidden heroes deserve justice even after the world tries to erase them. The Memorial Hall at Fort Owen had been built to make silence feel sacred. White chairs formed perfect rows beneath banners of old campaigns. Photographs of fallen soldiers. A polished bronze plaque stood at the front, engraved with names from a mission nobody outside the unit was allowed to discuss. Even the date had been softened into vague official language. Operation Night Harbor, classified medical evacuation, casualties sustained under hostile. Countess Stealth read it. October reading it. She knew the smell of burned canvas from that night. She knew the sound of rotor blades that never came low enough. She knew how a soldier's hand felt when the body attached to it had already made peace with death, but the eyes were still begging the medic not to leave. She stood in the back corner, wearing a plain dark jacket over a white blouse. No medals, no unit pin, no field pad. She had removed the patch from her sleeve that morning with trembling fingers after a junior officer told her it was not authorized for public display. Not authorized. She had worn that patch while tying tourniquets with her teeth. She had worn it while crawling under rifle fire. She had worn it while holding a pressure bandage against Sergeant Matthew Rice's chest and ordering him to stay alive like he had personally offended her by bleeding. But now, inside a clean hall full of polished shoes and careful speeches, the patch was too dangerous. At the front, Colonel Adrian Harlow stood beside the podium. She was newly assigned as post commander, sharp-eyed and formal, a woman who carried authority without raising her voice. Beside her was Major Conrad Mercer, the man in charge of the ceremony, holding a leather folder with the memorial remarks. Lena had not seen Mercer in 11 years. He had aged well in the unfair way some men did. Silver touching his hairline, uniform fitted perfectly, ribbons bright, and enough to distract from the coldness behind his eyes. He had been a captain during Night Harbor. He had given the retreat order. He had signed the first casualty report. He had looked directly at Lena when she came back covered in blood and ash and told her, "You were never there." The hall quieted. A veteran entered slowly from side aisle, leaning on a cane. His right leg dragged half a second behind the left. Sergeant Matthew Rice, retired now. His dress uniform, altered to fit the body wore, had left him. He had a scar that disappeared under his collar and reappeared near his jaw like lightning trapped beneath skin. Next to him walked Ranger. The war dog was old, broad-chested, black and tan, with gray around his muzzle and one hind leg braced in a carbon support. His ears were no longer perfectly sharp, but his eyes had the frightening focus of an animal that had learned human lies and never forgiven them. A service vest hung across his shoulders, patched with his old cool unit number. The moment Ranger entered, Lena stopped breathing. The dog saw her. Not noticed, not glanced. Saw. His ears lifted. His body froze. Then he made a sound so low it seemed to come from the floorboards. Matteo followed the dog's stare. His tired eyes found Lena in the back corner, and confusion moved across his face before something deeper replaced it. Pain, recognition, fear of recognition. Lena looked down, saw, not remember. She thought it was not because she did not want justice. She had wanted justice once with a hunger that kept her awake through whole winters. But years had made justice feel like a door that opened only into another burning room. She had rebuilt herself quietly. Civilian hospital shifts, small apartment, no photographs, no ceremonies. She had come only because an unsigned envelope arrived 2 weeks earlier. Inside had been a memorial invitation and a single sentence typed on plain paper. "They are forgetting her again. Bring the tag." No signature. But at the bottom, stamped in old red ink, was one word: lantern. Her call sign, the one that had vanished from every record. At the podium, Mercer began speaking. "Today we gather to honor those whose sacrifice preserved the lives of many and upheld the finest traditions of military service." His voice was warm, practiced, the kind of voice that made betrayal sound like weather. Lena's hand closed around the dog tag in her pocket. It was bent slightly at one corner, darkened by time and heat. It did not bear her legal name. It read, Voss Elmet Detachment Call Sign. Lantern under that was a lie. No official. Rodden Rich. Trias Mercer. Read the names. Corporal Eli Brand. Specialist Hannah Lieutenant Aaron Pike. Staff Sergeant Owen Seals. Each name landed gently in the hall, followed by the soft bell from a ceremonial stand. Families lowered their heads. Survivors closed their eyes. Lena's stomach tightened as the list neared the end. There should have been one more name, not because she had died, but because every after-action witness statement had named her as the medic who stayed behind. The original field memorial had included her. Matteo had carved her call sign into the underside of a crate before evacuation. Ranger had refused to leave her aid station until she physically pushed him toward the extraction line. Mercer closed the folder, and to all unnamed support personnel, whose contributions remain part of classified history, we extend our gratitude. Unnamed. Lena fell. The word passed through her. Lia tail. Ranger growls. The hall stirred. Matteo whispered, "Easy, boy." But Ranger was not looking at the crowd. He was staring at the bronze plaque. His lips pulled back. The growl deepened. Mercer paused, smile stiffening. "Sergeant Reyes, please control the animal." Mateos, jaw flexed. He's controlled. "Sir." Ranger lunged forward. Gasp as broke across the hall as the old dog dragged his braced leg over the polished floor. Pulling Matteo half-step, he reached the front stage, sniffed the base of the plaque, then turned abruptly toward Mercer's leather folder. "Remove him." Mercer snapped. 2 young soldiers stepped forward. Ranger barked once, not wild, not frightened, commanding. The soldiers stopped. Lena's heart began to slam against her ribs because she knew that bark. Ranger had used it outside the burning field clinic when he found a living man under a pile of dead canvas. He had used it when he smelled blood no human could see. Colonel Harlow leaned toward Matteo. "What is he alerting on?" Matteo looked helpless. "I don't know, Mom. Man, he hasn't done this in years." Ranger pawed at the edge of Mercer's folder. Mercer pulled it away too quickly. too sharply. A folded photograph slipped from between the pages and fluttered to the stage. The room went and picked it up. Lena could not see the image from the back, but she saw the change in Harlow's face. Professional composure cracked just enough to reveal shock. Mercer reached for it. That is part of the restricted ceremony archive. Harlow did not hand it over. She turned the photograph toward the hall. It was grainy, smoke-streaked, taken under harsh evacuation lights. A younger Ranger stood beside a collapsed Trias 10. Matteo lay on a stretcher, barely conscious, and kneeling over him, one hand pressed into his chest wound, the other holding up an IV bag tied to a rifle. Was Lena Voss? On her sleeve was the forbidden pass. Under the image, in faded marker, someone had written, "Lantern did not retreat." The hall stopped breathing with her. Then Matteo turned slowly in his chair and looked at Lena as if a locked door inside his mind had just been kicked open. And Ranger, still at the front of the hall, lowered his head toward the photograph and whined like he had finally found a grave. For 11 years, Lena Voss had practiced being invisible. She knew how to stand near exits, how to smile without inviting questions, how to answer, "Were you military?" with "I worked around military hospitals," and let people assume the rest. She knew how to let Memorial Day pass without opening the shoebox under her bed. But invisibility depended on everyone agreeing not to look. Now every face in the hall turned toward her. Some faces were curious, some confused. A few older soldiers looked as if they had seen a ghost walk in wearing civilian shoes. Colonel Harlow spoke first. "Ma'am," she said, voice controlled, "please come forward." Lena did not move. The aisle between her and the podium seemed longer than any battlefield. It was one thing to crawl through smoke when people were screaming for help. It was another to walk through silence while people wondered whether you were a liar, a hero, or an embarrassment. Mercer stepped closer to Harlow, lowering his voice but not enough. "Colonel, I strongly advise against turning this ceremony into an inquiry." Harlow's eyes stayed on Lena. "Major, the ceremony became an inquiry when a service dog produced evidence from your folder. That photograph lacks context. Then we will provide context." It was a clean word for dirty things. Matteo pushed himself upright with his cane. The movement cost him. Lena saw it in the tightness around his mouth. "Her name is Lena," he said. His voice was rough, but it carried. A woman in the second row turned. A young soldier whispered, "Who?" Matteo. His eyes did not leave Lena's face. "I heard that name in my sleep for years." "Lena. Lantern. I thought maybe I made it up because the report said no medic stayed behind." Mercer sat softly. Sergeant Rise suffered extensive trauma. His recollections were determined unreliable during the original review. Matteo flanced, as if struck. There it was, the same old weapon. Not bullets, not bombs, paper. Our report could wound more permanently than shrapnel, if enough important men signed it. Ranger left the stage and limped down the aisle toward Lena. No one stopped him this time. The dog's nails clicked against the floor. Slow, uneven, determined. When he reached her, he did not jump, he did not bark. He pressed his gray muzzle against her right hand, the hand with the scar. The scar began at the base of her Tillman cross, the palm in a pale crescent. It came from a piece of helicopter glass she had used as a makeshift blade after her sheer snap. She had cut open Meteor's blood-soaked uniform with that glass, sliced herself deep, then ignored the wound until after dawn. Ranger sniffed the scar. Then he sat, the old command, Identify friend. Lena closed her eyes. Render, she whispered. The dog's tail moved once. Something softer and more dangerous. Belief beginning. Harlow descended from the stage. She stopped a respectful distance from Lena. Are you nurse? Lena Voss. Lena opened her eyes. It was. Were you assigned to the medical detachment during Operation Night Harbor? Mercer Cadian. She was a civilian contractor attached to rear recovery, not cleared for forward action. Lena looked at him for the first time. 11 years had passed, but the old fury recognized him instantly. I was cleared enough when your men were bleeding, she said. The hall went silent again. Mercer's face hardened. Careful, Harlow shifted her body slightly, placing herself between them. Major Mercer, you will not caution a witness in front of me. Witness. Harlow's voice softened only a fraction. MS. Voss, why is your name not on the plaque? Lena laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Because I came back. The answer confused some of them. Harlow understood enough to wait. Lena looked toward the bronze plaque. 14 were supposed to die at Raven Ridge. That was the number in the first report. 14. Then 6 came out alive after the retreat order. The story changed. The official record said an aircrew diversion saved them. A supply team, weather break, anything except the truth. Matteo whispered. Not all. Her eyes found Corporal Ely Rand's photo on the wall. 22 years old. Smile too open for war. He had called her Mom even after she told him nurses under fire did not have time for manners. He did not save all of them, she said. The guilt rose, familiar and patient. It had never left. It had only learned where to sleep. Ranger leaned his body against her leg. That nearly broke her. Mercer spoke to the crowd now, regaining control through volume. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing is a remarkable emotional disruption. Miss Voss was present in a limited capacity, but classified operational circumstances prevented full acknowledgement. None erupted bitterly. You just denied her while seeing Nostine. A few veterans murmured agreement. Harlow turned to Mercer. Why was the photograph in your folder? I was included in archive material for verification. Verification of what? Mercer's mouth tightened. Restricted personnel details. Ranger suddenly stood. He turned away from Lena, nose working, and began limping toward the side hallway behind the stage. Matteo frowned. Ranger, the dog did not stop. He passed the framed photos, past the folded flags, past the ceremonial bell. At the rear of the stage was a closed door marked authorized, staff only. Ranger scratched at it. Harlow looked at Mercer. What's behind that door? Storage. The answer came too fast. Lena heard it. Harlow heard it. Matteo heard it. Ranger scratched again harder. Mercer stepped toward the dog. This has gone far enough. The old war dog's body trembled with age, but his eyes were no older than the night. He had dragged a radio cable through mud to Lena's aid station. Harlow signaled to a nearby soldier. Open the door. Mercer snapped. Colonel, I object. You may write that objection down after the ceremony. The soldier hesitated. The door opened on a narrow storage room stacked with folded chairs, sound equipment, boxes of programs, and old memorial displays. Ranger pushed inside, sniffing along the floor with fierce purpose. Lena did not want to follow. Every instinct told her that whatever waited in that room had been buried for a reason. She had spent 11 years surviving the burial, Some truths, once uncovered, did not just free you. They demanded payment. But Matteo was already moving, slow and painful. Cane striking the floor. Harlow followed him. Selena followed Ranger. The doc reached a stack of dusty wooden crates near the back wall. He pawed at the lowest one until a faded label tore loose. Lena crushed before she could stop herself. The label read, Night Harbor Memorial Materials. Zone not display. Her hands went cold. Harlow lifted the lid. Inside were old banners, damaged photo boards, water-stained papers, and a folded piece of cloth sealed in a clear evidence bag. Lena knew the cloth before Harlow pulled it free. A field patch, dark blue border, white lantern stitched at the center. A red cross sewn badly beneath it because Eli Brand had insisted the unit medic needed her own symbol. On the back, in black marker, were 7 signatures. Matteo inhaled sharply. Pad was on her sleeve. He said, The night she came back for us. Mercer stood in the doorway, pale with anger. Ranger shoved his nose deeper into the crate and caught his teeth on something metal. He tugged once, twice. A small lockbox slid out from beneath the memorial cloth. It hit the floor with a heavy sound. On its lid was a strip of medical tape, yellowed with age. Written on it in Lena's handwriting were 3 words she had not seen since the fire. If I'm gone. No one touched the lockbox at first. It sat on the storage room floor between them like an unexploded shell. Lena stared at her own handwriting. The letters were slanted because her right hand had been bleeding when she wrote them. She remembered tearing the strip of tape with her teeth. She remembered shouting over mortar impacts. She remembered thinking that records mattered only if someone survived to read them. But she did not remember the box. That frightened her more than if she had. Memory after trauma did not vanish cleanly. It hid pieces inside sounds, smells, sudden flashes. The mind protected itself by locking doors without telling you where it put the keys. Ranger not get the box toward her. Lena stepped back. I can, she said. Matteo lowered himself painfully onto a folding chair. His face had gone gray, but his eyes were fixed on the tape. Lantern, what is it? The call sign struck the room harder than her name. Lena shook her head. Don't call me that. Why? Because she stayed at Raven Ridge. Matteo's voice softened. So did you know? Lena's chest tightened. I came home. She did. Harlow watched her with the careful attention of someone trained to recognize when a person stood near the edge of memory. Ms. Voss, we do not have to open it here. That box is potentially classified property and should be transferred through proper channels. Ranger growled. Harlow looked at Mercer. You seem very eager to protect channels. I am eager to protect this command from a public breach. This command is currently standing inside a storage room containing undisplayed memorial evidence and a lockbox marked Anthea. Witness handwriting. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Witness is a generous term. Lena surprised herself by moving toward him. She did not shout. Her voice came low. You wrote me out because I disobeyed your retreat order. Mercer's expression did not change, but the pulse in his neck did. You misunderstand command responsibility. I understood it when I heard you leave 6 men in a burning clinic. The air tightened. Matteo looked at Mercer. Slowly, what did she say? Mercer turned to him. Sergeant, I will not debate tactical decisions with a patient whose medical condition I was. I remember somebody screaming that the A station still had wounded inside. His breathing became ragged. Ranger immediately went to him, pressing his shoulder against Mateo's leg. Lena saw the tremor in Mateo's hand. She knelt before him without thinking, old nurse instincts overriding fear. Slow breaths, she said, in through the nose. Count with me. He obeyed because his body remembered her voice even when his mind had doubted it. 1, 2, 3. The room seemed to shift around them. Not storage anymore. Not ceremony. For a moment it became canvas walls. Red light, smoke, bodies on stretchers, Ranger barking beyond the flap. Mateo whispered, "You told me to count backward from 10. Lena's hand froze. I kept messing it up. His eyes filled. You said, "Fine, Reyes, count forward." War already does everything backward. A broken laugh escaped Lena before tears burned behind it. She had said that she had been 29, exhausted, terrified, trying to keep a man conscious while the world came apart. Madame looked at her like that single absurd sentence had returned a tragedy to him. "I didn't make you up," he said. "No," Lena whispered. "You didn't." Harlow crushed beside the lockbox. MS, Voss, so you know the combination. Lena wiped her face quickly. If I said it, yes. She reached for the lock with a hand that did not feel like hers. October, choose October. She closed her eyes. No, she would not have used the mission date, too obvious. Alice's birthday. No, the number of patients. She looked at Ranger. The dog stared back, ears lifted. A memory surfaced. Eli Brand, laughing as he painted a white lantern on a scrap of cloth. Every lighthouse needs a number. Ma'am Lena had answered. Lynn had said, his one is. How many did you pull out last week? 7, she had said. And how many did Ranger find? 3. And how many times did Captain Mercer pretend he won, lost, until you pointed at the map? Ali, 0, 7, 3, 1. Lantern card. Lena's breath caught. She turned the dial. Sion, Chimchion. The lock opened. Mateo swore softly. Harlow lifted the lid. Inside were a compact field recorder, several folded tries, a scarce notebook, 2 doc tasks, and a small cloth bundle stiff with old blood. On top lay a waterproof casualty roster. Harlow unfolded it carefully. Her eyes moved over the page. Then she looked up. This roster lists Nurse Lena Voss as acting medical lead at Raven Ridge. Mercer sighed. Field rosters are often inaccurate during combat conditions. It also lists 6 delayed evacuations after the retreat order. All marked recovered alive. Matthew Redham, Mayo, Shaw, Isaac Bell, Peter Sloan, Owen Seals, Nora Vale. Every name belonged to someone. On the official memorial program, Ace recovered by aircrew diversion. Unknown support personnel. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. Does this still work? Mercer moved fast, too fast. He reached for the recorder, but Ranger launched himself between them with a bark that slammed against the walls. The old dog's body hit Mercer's legs, not enough to injure him, but enough to knock him back into the doorway. Control that animal, Mercer shouted. Mayo stood despite the pain. Harlow's voice sharpened. Major Mercer, step out of this room. I am the senior officer attached to this memorial archive, and I am the installation commander. Step out. For a moment, Lena thought Mercer would refuse. Then he adjusted his jacket and stepped back. His face had gone expressionless in a way that frightened her. Anger showed itself. Calculation heat. Harlow handed the recorder. to a communications technician who had appeared near the door with a stunned look. "Can you play it?" The young technician examined it. "My battery is dead, but the storage card might be intact." Harlow nodded. "Do it." Quietly, the technician left with the recorder. Mercer watched him go. Lena saw his eyes flick toward the side exit. Ranger saw it too. The dog growled. Back to the box. She unfolded the scorched notebook. The first pages were smeared and nearly unreadable. Then came Trias shorthand, blood ties, treatments, evacuation priority. On the final, legible page was a sentence written so hard the pen had torn the paper. Mercer ordered withdrawal while wounded realized he knows where. Eli put the second copy. Lena stopped breathing. Matteo looked at the dog. Harlow looked at the dog. Harlow looked at Lena. "Who is Elie?" Lena's voice disappeared. Corporal Elie Brand smiled from the wall outside. Forever 22, forever unburied, in the part of her that still heard him calling for more gauze. "He was my last patient," Lena said. Ranger suddenly turned toward the hallway and barked 3 times. Not at Mercer, not at the box, at the memorial wall. Then he bolted as fast as his damaged leg allowed. Matteo grabbed his cane. Ranger knows where the second copy is, and for the first time in 11 years, Lena understood that the dead had not been silent. Someone had hidden the truth before the fire took him. The memorial guests had begun murmuring in clusters outside the storage room. Rumors moved faster than orders. A forgotten nurse, a hidden photograph, a war dog array, a locked box, a major removed from the room by the new commander. By the time Lena followed Ranger back into the hall, the ceremony no longer looked like a ceremony. It looked like a trial waiting for a judge. Ranger limped straight to the memorial wall. The photographs hung in 2 rows. Young faces, serious faces, smiling faces that belonged to people who had no idea their last image would one day watch strangers argue over their deaths. Ranger stopped beneath Corporal Eli Brand's photograph. Lena nearly turned away. Elie's picture had been taken 3 days before Raven Ridge. He was grinning with a roll of medical tape stuck to his helmet. Someone had drawn a tiny lantern on it. Lena remembered scolding him for wasting supplies. He had saluted her with 2 fingers and said, "Moral is medicine, Mom." Ranger stood on his hind legs with difficulty and pawed at the lower edge of the frame. "Careful," a staff sergeant murmured, but Harlow raised a hand. "Let him." Ranger pawed again. The frame shifted. Lena stepped forward automatically. Hal hurt himself. Her hand touched the frame to steady it. Something clicked. The photograph swung outward on a hidden hinge. "Ah!" Gasp traveled through the hall. Behind the frame was a shallow recess cut into the wall. Inside lay a sealed plastic pouch, yellowed but intact. Around it was a strip of blue field cloth. Ellie's handwriting covered the pouch in thick black marker. "For a lantern if they erase her. For Rise if she doesn't come home. For Ranger because Hal find it first." Lena's knees almost failed. Matteo caught her elbow. For a moment she wanted to push him away, not because she did not need help, but because needing help felt like surrender. Then Ranger pressed his head against her hip, and the pride went out of her. She stayed upright because they held her there. The wounded man she had saved, the dog who had remembered, and the dead boy whose handwriting had crossed 11 years like a flare. Harlow removed the pouch with gloved hands. Mercer had returned to the edge of the hall, with 2 military police officers behind him. His face was calm now, too calm. Colonel Haraway said, "This has exceeded any reasonable memorial proceeding. I have contacted Division Legal. All materials related to Operation Night Harbor must be secured. Harlow held up the pouch. They will be by appropriate authority. That would be me until relief. Mercer smiled slightly. You may find that relief arrives sooner than expected. A chill moved through Lena. That was Mercer's gift, making threats sound administrative. Harlow's eyes did not move. Major, stand aside. The NPS looked uncertain. Neither moved toward the pouch. Harlow opened it. Inside was a small memory card, wrapped in gauze, several folded pages, and a photograph taken at night. The photograph showed the Raven Ridge A station before the attack. Lena stood in the center with her arms crossed, pretending annoyance. Ellie Brand crouched in front, holding Ranger's face toward the camera. Mateo stood behind them with one hand raised in a peace sign. In the background, Mercer was visible near the radio table, face turned away. On the back, Eli had written, "Proof we existed before they needed us gone." Harlow unfolded the pages. Her expression changed with each line. "These are witness notes," she said quietly. Mateo leaned closer. From Ellie, E.S., dated the night of the mission. Harlow read silently for a moment. Then, aloud, Captain Mercer repeated, "Withdrawal order at DZT Display. Confirm distinguished Trias." Nurse Voss refused to abandon non-ambulatory personnel. Co-Ranger returned twice with casualty locations after communications failed. Reyes witnessed argument before losing consciousness. Mateo shut his eyes. The memory hit him visibly. He was no longer in the memorial hall. He was back in the smoke. "I heard you yelling," he whispered to Lena. "You told Mercer the clinic wasn't clear." Lena looked at the floor. Mercer's voice cut in. "Toss. Written by a frightened corporal under attack. They are not official findings." Harlow turned a page. "There's more." She read again. "I'm turn is blamed. Know this. She did not break the mission. She saved what Mercer left behind." Someone in the hall made a small, wounded sound. It might have been Lena. She had not known. Eli saw that much. He had been moving supplies, carrying stretchers, laughing too loudly so the wounded would not hear shelling. She had thought she was protecting him from the command argument. But Eli had heard. Ellie had understood. And then Eli had hidden the proof. Ranger sat beneath his photograph and whined. Matthew crouched with difficulty and placed a hand on the dog's neck. "Good boy." The words undid something in the hall. Several veterans wiped their eyes. Younger soldiers looked stunned, as if discovering history was not always written by the brave. The communications technician hurried in, carrying a tablet and a cracked field recorder. "Colonel," he said, voice tight, "this storage card works. There are audio files. Mercer's comm slipped. Do not play classified audio in this room," he said. Harlow looked at Lena. "Miss Voss?" Lena almost said no. It had already bitten deep today. If the audio played, everyone would hear her voice from that night. Not the quiet civilian nurse, not the woman who measured her days in hospital charts and grocery lists. They would hear Lantern under fire. They would hear the dead alive. But then she saw erase her. They had, again. Lena nodded. "Play it." The technician connected the recorder to the hall sound system. Static cracked through the speakers. 10 came a voice, young and breathless. "Eli, Raven Ridge A station, recorder, backup active. We lost main comms. Ranger found 2 more, west side. Lantern says keep logging. If we die, paperwork can go to hell, but evidence stays." A few shocked laughs. broke through tears. Then Lena's voice filled the hall, younger, hoarse, commanding. Eli, less poetry, more pressure, bandages. Another voice groaned, Mateo, tell the nurse I hate her. Lena's recorded voice answered, good, keeps you awake. The hall listened, as if hearing ghosts sing. Then another voice came through, sharp and furious. Mercer, all mobile personnel. Repeat. Withdraw, now. Leave non-ambulatory casualties for secondary recovery. Static. Rena's voice. Negative. Raven command. We have live wounded inside West Trias. Mercer. Voss, you are not authorized to counterman. Lena, I am authorized. By sick pulses, I can still feel. Mercer, had is an order. Lena, then write me up after you help me carry them. Silence. Dumna, then Mercer, colder. Hiya, you stay. You are outside command protection. Lena's recorded voice dropped low. Don't I guess protection left before I did. The audio continued. Explosions, Ranger barking, Eli shouting that smoke was moving east. Lena ordering Milo to squeeze her hand. Ranger barking again, closer, frantic. Then Alice's voice, suddenly afraid. Lantern, Mercer's men pulled back. They took the evac markers. Lena heard her younger self breathe hard. Then, we make our own. The recording dissolved into static. The technician paused it. No one spoke. Mercer stood like stone, but his eyes had gone flat with hatred. Harlow faced him. Major Conrad, Mercer, you are relieved from participation in this ceremony pending formal investigation. The hall erupted in whispers. Mercer stepped closer to Harlow. You have no idea what you are opening. Lena looked at him, grave. Mercer turned his gaze on her. For the first time that day, he looked afraid, not of punishment, of what else Ranger might find. Then the technician looked down at the tablet, confused. Colonel, there's another audio file. It was recorded after the fire. Lena's blood went cold. Tess, impossible, she whispered. The technician swallowed. The file name is Lantern Last. Lena sighed nah before anyone asked. It came out sharp, almost panicked. No, the hall froze around her. Harlow stepped closer. We can stop. But the damage had already begun. The file name hung in the air like a hand reaching from a buried place. Lantern Last. Lena had survived Raven Ridge, but not the way people imagined survival. Her body came home. Her hands kept working. Her lungs learned clean air again, but some part of her had remained in that field clinic with the last patients, still counting bandages, still listening for Ranger's bark, still bargaining with God in a language made of blood types and evacuation times. She did not remember making a final recording. That meant one of two things. Either someone else had named it, or she had been closer to death than anyone admitted. Mateo saw her face and turned toward Harlow. Don't play it here. Mercer laughed softly from near the wall. He was flanked now by the uncertain MPS, not arrested but contained. Convenient. The witness wants evidence until it becomes uncomfortable. Ranger snarled so suddenly that one MP reached for his sidearm. Do not, Harlow said, voice like steel. The MP froze. Ranger placed himself between Mercer and Lena. The dog's body trembled with age and rage. His brace creaked. His ears flattened. For 11 years, humans had spoken over memory. Ranger had never accepted their language. He knew only scent, sound, loyalty, and the difference between the hand that saved and the hand that abandoned. Lina looked at the dog. Ranger looked at the dog. Ranger looked, asking her to suffer. He was asking her to finish. Play it, she whispered. Matteo turned. Lina, play it. The technician hesitated until Harlow nodded. Static again. This time, the sound was worse. Wind, fire, someone coughing. Then Elias' voice, faint and broken. Recorder, if this works, patient count final. A long breath. Rise alive, jaw alive. Sloan alive, Sloan alive. Seal alive. Ranger located too. Eli assisted until her voice stopped. In the hall, Ellis' photograph seemed to watch her. Recorded. Lina tried again. Corporal Brand critical. Blast trauma. He knows, I can't. The sound of can't. The sound of coughing. A dog whining. Ranger. 10. Ali's voice appeared, shockingly close. Team but alive. Ma'am, don't make that face. Recorded. Lina made a sound like a laugh breaking apart. You are not allowed to comfort your medic. Morale is medicine. In the hall, several people began crying openly. Lina covered her mouth, but she did not look away from the speakers. Eli continued, each word weaker. Put me on the list. You're already on the list. No. The other one. Pause. Fire snapping. Recorded. Lina sat. Ellie. Promise. I promise. Tell them Ranger knows. I will. No? If you don't get to. Ranger knows. The dog beside Lina whined, remembering his own name in a dead boy's voice. Then came a scrapping sound, as if the recorder had been moved. Ellie whispered, don't let Mercer Mickey the ghost. And another explosion swallowed the words. When the audio cleared, Lina's voice was very close to the recorder. This is Nurse Lina Voss, call sign lantern. I remained after withdrawal, because live casualties were present. Captain Mercer ordered retreat and removal of evac markers. FIM erased. Ask the wounded. Ask the dog. Ask the dog. Ask the dead who got names when I did not. Her breath hitched. I could not save Corporal Eli Brand. I am sorry. A long silence. Then, barely audible. I am so sorry. The recording ended. The hall did not move. There are silences that are empty, and silences that are full of everything people have refused to say. This one held 11 years of stolen honor. It held every form Lina had signed that returned stamped insufficient evidence. It held every nightmare Matteo had been told was unreliable. It held Ranger waiting beside doors that would not open. Lina had thought hearing Eli would destroy her. Instead, it destroyed the lie. Matteo stood slowly. His cane shook under his weight. He faced the hall. Not Mercer, I was told. My memory was trauma, he said. I was told. The nurse I remembered was a morphine dream. I believed them some days because believing them hurt less than knowing someone saved me and got buried for it. He turned toward Lina. You came back for me. Tears ran freely now. Ranger found you. Matteo looked at the dog. Then both of you did. Harlow moved to the podium. She did not ask permission from the event program, from Division Legal, from the old ceremony script, or from the bronze plaque. She stood before the microphone. This memorial ceremony is suspended, she said. In its place, this command will preserve all discovered evidence, reopen the record of Operation Night Harbor, and recognize that the account presented here today was incomplete. Mercer stepped forward. You cannot officially recognize unverified battlefield audio without authentication. Harlow's eyes cut toward him. Major, I did not say official recognition. I said the account was incomplete. He smiled thinly. Words matter. Tazal. Lena. See. Everyone looked at her. She wiped her face with the heel of her scared hand and stepped into the aisle. Her voice shook, but it held. Words took my name. Words called me support personnel. Words called Mateo unreliable. Words turned Ranger into an animal reacting badly instead of a witness who did his job. She looked at Mercer. Words matter because men like you hide inside them. A sound rose from the veterans, low approval. Reef, anger. Mercer's face flushed. You think that, with applause, he said. Do you think they buried your name just because of me? There were signatures above mine. People who needed Night Harbor clean. You open this, Nurse Voss, and you will learn how many heroes prefer clean records over honest ones. The room chilled, because there it was, the larger shadow. Harlow heard it too. Are you implying a wider falsification? Mercer looked as if he regretted speaking, but only for a second. I am implying, he said, that some graves are sealed to protect the wine. Stepped toward him. No, she said. Some graves are sealed to protest. Ranger barked. Once, the bell on the memorial stand trembled with the sound. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. An older man in civilian clothes entered, holding a folded envelope. He walked with the stiff posture of someone who had once worn rank and still expected rooms to part for him. Mercer went pale. Harlow turned. Identify yourself. The man looked past everyone and fixed his eyes on Lena. My name is Daniel Cha, he said. I was one of the 6 recovered from Raven Ridge. Mata whispered, Cha. The man lifted the envelope. And I have the order that arrests her. Daniel Cha had been listed in the official record as evacuated by aircrew diversion and sped on autumn stage. In truth, Lena remembered dragging him by the straps of his vest across 30 yards of broken ground while Ranger barked ahead of them into smoke. Cha had been unconscious, bleeding from the scalp, one arm twisted beneath him at an angle no arm should hold. She had spoken to him anyway because silence felt too much like surrender. You owe me coffee, she had told him while pulling. He had not answered. Now he stood at the back of the memorial hall with white hair, a civilian coat, and the expression of a man who had spent 11 years deciding whether fear was heavier than shame. Ranger recognized him second. The dog's head tilted, his nose lifted. Then he gave a short, uncertain whine. Cha's face collapsed. Hell, Ranger, he said. You stubborn old soldier. Mateo moved toward him. Stunned, the 2 men embraced awkwardly, both damaged in different ways, both alive because of a night they had been instructed to remember incorrectly. Lena stayed where she was. Cha looked at her over Mateo's shoulder. Nurse Voss, he said. No one had called her that with such ceremony in years. Lena's voice was quiet. Daniel, his eyes filled. I should have come sooner. Yes, she said. The word was not cruel. It was honest. Cha accepted it like a sentence. Harlow approached him. Mr. Cha, what order are you referring to? Cha handed her the envelope. I worked logistics after recovery, he said. Medical discharge took time. They thought I didn't understand what I saw because I was sedated most of the first week. But I saw enough. Papers came through. Corrections. One name removed repeatedly. Mercer stared at him. You stole classified material. Cha did not look at him. I preserved evidence of a crime. Harlow opened the envelope. Inside was a photocopy of a memorandum with black bars across several lines, but the visible text was enough to tighten every face that read it. Harlow read aloud. Recommendation. Omit civilian medical contract. Lena Voss from Forward Action Summary. Inclusion may trigger inquiry into deviation from withdrawal protocol and loss of command control. 8. Raven. Raven. Cool response inadmissible. A bitter laugh moved through the hall at that last line. Gungar response inadmissible. Ranger barked sharply, as if objecting on his own behalf. Cha continued, there were 3 signatures on the original. Mercer's was the lowest. Lena looked at Mercer. For years, she had made him the face of everything. It was easier that way. A single villain gave pain a shape. But Cha's words cracked the shape open. Above Mercer had been others. Review boards. Men who never smelled the smoke, but decided which names belonged to history. Harlow's mouth tightened. Duh, you have the original. Cha hesitated. Mercer noticed. His smile returned, faint and predatory. I photocopy. Convenient. Cha's hand trembled. The original was hidden. Where? Harlow asked. Cha looked at Ranger. Lena's skin prickled. Cha sighed with the dog's discharge file. Ranger's ears lifted. Matteo frowned. Why would it be there? Because Ranger was the one piece of evidence nobody knew how to redact. Cha said. His Kuska action report listed casualty finds after the retreat order. It contradicted the timeline, so they buried his file in medical storage, not operational archives. Harlow turned to a staff officer. Where are retired coup medical files stored? Veterinarians? Ma'am. Old records basement. Mercer gave a cold laugh. This is absurd. You are following a dog through an emotional conspiracy. Harlow looked at Ranger. His dog has found 2 hidden evidence caches in under an hour. Ranger sneezed. For the first time all day, a fragile laugh moved through the room. It did not last. Mercer stepped toward Harlow. Colonel Division Legal instructed that all further recovery stop pending review. When did they instruct that? Minutes ago. Some. Mercer held up his phone, but his screen was dark. Harlow's eyes narrowed. Major. Before Mercer could answer, Ranger lunged, not at him, but at his coat pocket. A folded slip fell out. The MP nearest him picked it up. Mercer's face changed. Harlow took the slip. It was not legal instruction. It was a visitor access pass for the veterinary annex records basement, dated that morning. Harlow looked at him. Why did you access Ranger's records before the ceremony? Mercer said nothing. The hall understood before anyone said it. He had known. He had come prepared to remove something. Lena felt cold. You knew Ranger could find it, she said. Mercer's eyes flickered toward the dog. I knew old animals behave unpredictably. Ranger growled. Harlow handed the slip to an MP. Major Mercer, you will ride under escort. The MP straightened. This time, he did not hesitate. Yes, Mama. Harlow turned to Lena, Matteo, and Cha. We are going to the veterinary annex. Watch me. The walk across Fort Arlen felt unreal. The memorial hall emptied behind them in waves. Some guests stayed inside, praying or crying near the photographs. Others followed at a distance, drawn by the sense that history was moving, and they did not want to be told later what courage had looked like. Winnow walked beside Ranger. The dog's brace clicked against the pavement. Every few steps, he leaned slightly into her leg, not for support exactly, but contact. Proof. Matteo followed with Cha, both limping in different rhythms. Harlow led ahead, phone to her ear, issuing orders with clipped calm. No one spoke of Eli, but he walked with them too. In the patch, in the recorder, in the hidden pouch, in the promise Ranger had carried longer than any human courage. The veterinary annex stood near the old training fields, a low brick building that smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain-wet fur. Retired cool plaques lined the entrance. Ranger paused before them. His nose touched one bronze name, Mace, then another, Willow. Then he moved on. The records basement door was locked. The staff officer swiped an access card. Red light. He tried again. Red light. Harlow's face hardened. Who changed access? No one answered. From behind them, Mercer spoke under MP escort. System fail. Ranger suddenly paused past the staff officer and moved toward a narrow service hallway beside the stairs. He sniffed along the wall, then stopped at a metal laundry chute door. Mateo City, no way. Ranger paused. Lena crouched and examined the latch. New scratches marked the paint. Something had been moved through there recently. Harlow ordered a maintenance sergeant forward. The latch was forced open. A stale draft rose from below. Ranger barked down into the darkness. The maintenance sergeant shined a flashlight. At the bottom of the chute lay a torn file folder, a strip of blue field cloth, and ashes. Someone had tried to burn the records, but among the ashes, protected beneath the metal lip of the chute, was a sealed veterinary envelope with Ranger's cut across the front. Lena reached for it, but Harlow stopped her gently. Let evidence handling take us. Lena nodded, though every part of her wanted to tear it open. The envelope was carried upstairs to a clean examination room. Harlow opened it on a steel table while everyone watched. Inside were Ranger's medical discharge forms, a cool-action report, photographs of his injuries, and a folded original memorandum with 3 signatures, Mercer's, a colonel now retired, and a brigadier general whose name made Harlow go very still. But Lena barely saw the signatures. Her eyes were on Ranger's action report. Harlow read quietly. Can return to Nurse Voss repeatedly, despite withdrawal command. Could refused handler extraction until Nurse Voss transferred. Final patient sustained shrapnel injury while shielding medical personnel during secondary blast. Lena looked down at Ranger's braced leg. She had always thought he was injured while searching, but the report said shielding medical personnel. A memory flashed. Heat, impact, Ranger's body slamming into her side. A yelp, her own hand on his fur, wet with blood. Oh God, she whispered. You got hurt because of me? Ranger looked up at her and wagged his tail once, as if the matter had been settled years ago and humans were embarrassingly slow. Mateo wiped his face. Then Harlow reached the final page. Her voice changed. There is an addendum. Mercer closed his eyes. Harlow read. Recommendation by reviewing officers. Remove Nurse Voss from mission narrative. Award consideration needed to prevent conflict with withdrawal compliance finding. Surviving personnel to receive corrected briefings. Ranger retired early. Action report sealed. The room went silent. Lena had not simply been forgotten. She had been denied on purpose. Harlow looked at Paige. Then alarm sounded from the hallway. A young soldier burst into the room. Ma'am, fire in the records basement. Ranger barked and bolted for the stairs. Mercer smiled, and Lena understood the final proof was still down there. Smoke changes people. Not ordinary smoke changes people. Not campfire smoke or kitchen smoke or the faint smoke of distant fields burning after harvest. Lena could tolerate those now if she had warning. But institutional smoke, the chemical buy of paper, plastic folders, old insulation, and a way of reaching into her chest and turning 11 years into one breath. The hallway outside the veterinary examination room blurred. Soldiers shouted. Someone pulled a fire alarm handle again, though it was already screaming. Harlow ordered evacuation. Matteo coughed and grabbed the door frame. Shaw backed away, face white. Ranger did not evacuate. The old dog hit the stairwell door with his shoulder and barked down into the basement. Ranger! Matteo shouted. The dog ignored him. Lena moved before thought could argue. Harlow caught her arm. No, Lena looked at her. The colonel's grip was firm, but not cruel. There are firefighters on post. Harlow's seat. You are not going into a burning records basement. Lena's laugh came out broken. I've heard that order before. Harlow's face changed, not offended, understanding. Desu had was, I know. Lena looked at Ranger clawing at the stairwell. But he smells something. Evidence is not worth your life. Lena's eyes fill. Sometimes evidence is the only reason people believe a life mattered. She pulled free. Matteo tried to follow. His injured leg buckled on the first step. Shaw caught him. Lena, Matteo shouted. She did not turn. The stairwell was filling with smoke, but the fire had not reached it fully. Sprinklers hissed somewhere below. Ranger descended ahead of her, low to the ground, following scent through chaos. Lena grabbed a wall-mounted emergency mask and pressed it over her mouth. Then took another from the case and clipped it loosely around Ranger's muzzle as best she could. He tolerated it for 3 seconds, then shook it off. Fine. Stubborn old soldier. At the basement landing, heat rolled under the door. The memory came alive. Raven Rich canvas burning. Ellie's shouting for more saline. Mercer ordering withdrawal. Ranger barking from smoke. Lena's hand hovered over the basement handle. For one terrible second, she was 29 again. And the door was not a basement door, but the flap of West Trice. On the other side were men she could not all save. Her body refused. Her mind screamed. Then Ranger looked back at her, not commanding, trusting. That was worse. Lena opened the door. Smoke poured out. She dropped low, one hand on Ranger's vest handle. The basement lights flickered. A small fire burned near the far shelves, climbing through boxes of old paper. Sprinklers had soaked part of the room, turning ash into black paste. The air flashed with alarm strobes. Ranger poured the largest flames toward our veterinary transport crates stacked against the wall. Show me, Lena coughed. Ranger shoved his head under the lowest crate and barked. Lena dragged it aside. Pain shot through her scarred hand, but she welcomed it. Pain man present. Behind the crate was a metal panel half loosened from the wall. Fresh tool marks. Someone had opened it recently. Lena pulled. The panel stuck. She pulled harder, coughing until her vision spotted. The panel came free. Inside the wall cavity was a waterproof document tube. Ranger seized the strap with his teeth and tugged. Together they dragged it out. A burning shelf cracked behind them. Lena tucked the tube under her arm. Go? Ranger did not go. He barked at the cavity again. No, Lena, seed, no more. He barked harder. She reached inside. Her fingers touched cloth. She pulled out a small bundle wrapped in a scorched medic scarf. The scarf was hers. Inside was a cracked nameplate, a melted syringe case, and a folded letter sealed in a plastic sleeve. On the sleeve was Alice's handwriting. Lantern, if you came back, you kept your promise. Now let us keep ours. The fire roared louder. A voice shouted from the stairs. MS, Voss, Harlow. Lena tried to stand, but dizziness tilted the room. Ranger pressed into her legs, bracing her. She gripped his vest. A beam fell near the aisle with a crash that sent sparks into the smoke. For one sickening second, The exit vanished behind Gray. Raven Ridge took the basement completely. Lena heard Eli Don make that face. She heard Mateo tell the nurse I hate her. She heard Mercer outside command protection. Then she heard herself, younger and stronger than memory had allowed. "Then we make our own." Lena tied the scarf bundle into Ranger's vest strap. "You take it," she said. Ranger refused to move. "Ranger, that's an order." The dog stared at her. She almost laughed despite choking. "You never did care about rank." She grabbed the document tube and crawled toward the stairwell with Ranger pressed against her side. Firefighters reached them halfway, pulling them through smoke into the landing. Hands lifted her. Someone took the tube. Someone shouted for oxygen. Lena resisted only when they tried to separate her from Ranger. No, she gasped. "He has evidence." Harlow knelt beside the dog and removed the scarf bundle from his vest. Her face softened when she saw the writing. "You found it," she said. Ranger collapsed onto his side. Mateo cried out from above. No. Lena pushed away the medic trying to examine her and crawled to the dog. "Ranger, hey, stay with me." His breathing was rough. The smoke had hurt him. Age had hurt him. Duty had dragged him past every limit. Lena put both hands on his chest, feeling the heartbeat beneath fur and scars. "Don't you do this," she whispered. "You already saved me once. You don't get to make me owe you twice." Ranger's eyes opened. His tail tapped weakly against the floor. Mateo reached them, half carried by Jaw. He lowered himself beside Ranger, sobbing without shame. "You stupid hero," Mateo whispered. Harlow stood over them holding the document tube and Eli's letter. Firefighter contained the basement blaze within minutes, but those minutes felt carved from bone. When Ranger was stable enough to move, they carried him upstairs on a stretcher usually used for large working dogs. He protested with one weak huff, offended by the indignity. Outside the annex, dozens of soldiers and veterans had gathered. The memorial had followed them. Word had spread across Fort Allen. The forgotten nurse, the hidden file, the fire. The Zager was carried out. The crowd, the dogs yelled. No one spoke. Then one young soldier raised his hand in salute. Another followed. Then another. Soon the path to the emergency veterinary truck was lined with salutes, not for rank, not for ceremony, but for a dog who had remembered what people tried to bury. Lena walked beside the stretcher, oxygen mask in one hand, refusing to put it back on. Harlow opened the document tube on the hood of a vehicle while evidence officers photographed every step onto every step. Inside was the original Night Harbor action summary before redaction. Lena's name appears 17 times. Nurse Voss established emergency triage under fire. Voss refused unlawful abandonment of live casualties. Voss coordinated Cal Ranger casualty recovery recommendation. Silver Star equivalent civilian valor recognition. Harlow read the last line twice. Then she unfolded Ellis' letter. Her voice shook when she read it aloud. Lantern thinks saving people means counting the ones who lived and apologizing for the ones who didn't. She is wrong. Tell her we counted her too. Lena bowed her head. Harlow turned the page. There was one final sentence. On the day they finally say her name. Every man who lived because she stayed should stand. Mateo gripped his cane. From the gathered crowd, 4 older veterans began pushing forward. Men and one woman Lena did not recognize at first, because time had changed their faces. Daniel Cha whispered their names. Bell, Sloan, Seals, Vale, all 6 recovered survivors of Raven Ridge were there, and every one of them was looking at Lena. They returned to the memorial hall at dusk. No one had planned it, no order required it. Yet somehow everyone understood the ceremony could not end beside a smoke-stained veterinary annex. The truth had come out of storage rooms, walls, files, fire, and a dog's wounded memory. Now it had to stand where the lie had stood. The hall looked different when they entered again. The chairs were no longer perfect. Some had been pushed aside during the rush. Programs lay scattered on seats. The bronze plaque at the front seemed smaller, less sacred now that everyone knew it had been polished. Around an absence, Ranger was not walking. He rode on a wheel stretcher, alert but exhausted, with an oxygen line near his muzzle and Matteo's hand resting on his vest. The veterinary medic had objected to moving him, but Ranger had objected louder to being left behind. In the end, everyone compromised. He could attend if he remained on the stretcher. Ranger accepted this with the expression of an old commander disappointed in his troops. Lena walked behind him. She had washed the smoke from her face, but her blouse still smelled faintly of the basement fire. Her scarred hand was bandaged where the wall panel had reopened old tissue. Around her shoulders, Colonel Harrow had placed the recovered field scarf. The blue cloth was scorched at the edges, but the stitched lantern remained visible. Major Mercer was gone, escorted, detained, awaiting formal investigation. Yet his absence did not erase what he represented. Lena knew better now. Mercer had been one hand on the shovel. Others had helped dig. The coming inquiry would be long, ugly, and resisted by people whose signatures lived in sealed places. But tonight was not the inquiry. Tonight was the name. Colonel Harrow stood at the podium, without the leather folder. She had thrown out the prepared remarks. In their place lay Ali's letter, Ranger's action report, the original summary, and Lena's recovered page. The 6 survivors of Raven Ridge sat in the front row. Matteo Rise with his cane, Daniel Chaw with the envelope that had cost him 11 years of sleep, Isaac Bell, whose hands shook from nerve damage, but whose voice remained steady, Peter Sloan, who had named his daughter Lena and never told his wife why until that afternoon. Owen Seals, who had believed the official story because disbelief had once threatened to destroy him. Nora Vale, who wore a bracelet made from a bootlace Ranger had chewed through during recovery. 6 witnesses, 6 reasons the reply. Lena stood near the Cyazo, not seated with them, not at the front. Old habits pulled her toward corners. She told herself she was fine there. Ranger lifted his head and barked once. Everyone turned. The dog stared at Lena, then at the empty chair centered before the podium. Matteo smiled through tears. Hesse stopped hiding. A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the hall. Lena shook her head slightly. Ranger barked again. Colonel Harlow stepped down from the podium, walked to Lena, and offered her hand. She did not drag. She did not command. She simply waited. That kindness almost made Lena refuse. Orders were easy to resist. Kindness required trust. Lena took her hand. They walked to the front together. As Lena sat in the center chair, the 6 survivors stood. Not quickly, not smoothly. War had taken too much for that. Cane scrap, braces locked, hands gripped armrests. But they stood. Ranger's tail tapped against the stretcher. Harlow returned to the microphone. Today's ceremony began with omission. She said, "It will not end that way." Her voice carried into every corner. The original purpose of this memorial was to honor That purpose remains sacred. But honor built on erasure is not honor. It is decoration over a wound. Lena stared at the floor. She could feel every eye on her and wanted to disappear. At the same time, some buried part of her, the part she had called Lantern and mourned as dead, lifted its head. Harlow continued. Evidence recovered today establishes that Nurse La Falsai Lantern served as acting medical lead at Raven Ridge. After command withdrawal, she remained with live casualties under hostile conditions, coordinated recovery with Kuranger, preserved casualty records, and directly contributed to the survival of 6 personnel. The words entered the room like bells. Not unnamed. Not support personnel. Nurse Lena Voss, call sign Lantern. Lena pressed her bandaged hand against her knee to keep it from shaking. Harlow looked down at the recovered action summary. The record also establishes that her role was intentionally removed from the official narrative. Award consideration was denied, witness memories were discredited, and Kuranger's action report was sealed. The crowd murmured, anger rising again. Harlow lifted a hand. Justice will follow. Records will be corrected through proper authority. But there is one correction this room can make now. She turned toward the bronze plaque. A McMahon soldier stepped forward, carrying a temporary nameplate. It was simple brushed metal, hastily engraved by the base machine shop after Harlow made one quiet call. He fixed it beneath the existing names. The hall washed. Lena could not read it from where she sat, but she did not need to. Harlow read aloud. Nurse Lena Voss, Lantern for the wounded. She would not leave for the record. They could not bury the words blurred. Lena covered her face. She had imagined vindication before. In angry years, she imagined hearings, apologies, officers forced to admit what they had done. Later, when anger burned down to ash, she imagined nothing. The absence became normal. A missing tooth, the tongue still found. She had not imagined this. Not the doc beside her, not Matteo standing, not Ella in the podium. Not a room full of soldiers learning that forgetting could be a choice, and remembering could be an act of rebellion. Matteo stepped forward. He did not use the microphone at first. He faced Lena. I need to say this, where they denied it, he said. You saved my life. Lena shook her head through tears. You didn't get to try his gratitude. A soft laugh moved through the room. He smiled sadly. I spent years thinking I owed my life to a dream. But you were real. Your hands were. Ranger was real. Ranger was real. Ellie was real. His voice broke on Ellie's name. Every birthday my children had. Every morning I complained about pain. Every cup of coffee I drank when I should have been buried at Raven Ridge, you were in it. And they made me forget the name I should have been teaching my family. Lena could barely breathe. Daniel Cha stood beside him. We were briefed after recovery. Hours were told our memories were medication effects. Some were told the medic had been evacuated before the final blast. Some were told not to ask because classified meant patriotic silence. Nora Viola's voice cut in from the row. Silence is not patriotism when it protects betrayal. The hall answered with a low, fierce agreement. Harlow nodded. Then she lifted the recovered field patch. Voss. The patch looked impossibly small for what it carried. Blue border, white lantern, red cross stitched crookedly by Ali's impatient hand. 7 signatures on the back, one for each person who had sworn to get through the night. He was told not to wear it. Lena's seat. Harlow stepped down from the podium. That order is rescinded. Lena laughed. And this time it hurt in a different way. Harlow pinned a patch to Lena's jacket. They all rose, all at once. Not just the 6 survivors, not just the veterans. Every soldier, nurse, technician, family member, and officer stood. Ranga struggled on the stretcher. Matteo tried to keep him down. Easy, boy. Ranga ignored him. With a sound between a groan and a growl, the old dog pushed himself upright. His braced leg trembled. His paws slipped once. Lena reached for him. But Ranga stood. Not tall, not steady, but standing. Then Matteo raised his hand in salute. The 6 survivors followed. Colonel Harlow saluted. The young soldiers saluted. The families saluted. The families saluted. Finally, the entire unit, the same institution that had once accepted her absence as paperwork, held its salute for the nurse they had denied. Lena sat frozen beneath it. Her first instinct was to reject it, to say she did not deserve it because Eli was not there, because Ranga had paid with his leg, because 6, but others did not. Guilt rose loyal as ever, ready to drag her back down. Then she felt Ranga's head press into her bandaged hand. The old dog looked at her with tired eyes, not asking permission, giving it. Lena stood. The salute remained. She raised her hand slowly, awkwardly, not as a soldier, but as a medic who had carried rank only in emergencies and grief. She returned the salute, and somewhere inside her, the door of the burning clinic opened at last, not to smoke, to light. That night, Lena Voss did not get back the years stolen from her. Ranga did not get back his young legs, and Eli did not walk through the memorial doors. But the truth finally had a place to stand. The forgotten nurse had a name again, and the unit learned that heroes do not disappear unless people choose to look away. If this story moved you, subscribe for more hidden heroes, brave dogs, and emotional justice.